Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of critical sparkling water reviews.
Would you say it's reviews or comparisons as well?
I would just say comparisons. That's all we've done, really, technically.
Okay, cool.
So, you've made a fan of me, though. I'm now a sparkling water drinker. So,
Okay, awesome. I mean, was it me or was it the boys? Because we talked about it a little bit.
it's you.
Oh, okay,
because
okay.
because you brought up the idea of, well, you were going to drink some LaCroix with a twist of lime, and
Okay.
we were serving. We do these beauty events at the store where I work, and so they have a lot of this is a real popular thing for them to get because I guess it's pretty cheap, and they get some LaCroix, and they had lemon. The hint of lemon, and I drank it. It was like, it's all right. But then as I've come along, because I love Coke, I like the bite of the Coke. So it's made me a fan of having bite in my water. And I've pretty much quit drinking Coke for the most part, except for the required daily allowance of caffeine. I need to not have my head cave in.
Okay, nice. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're starting to get off the Coke.
Right?
That's good. The Coca-Cola.
The Coca-Cola, yes. not the other Coke. Okay.
That's not the picture at all.
That too, but that's been decades. Right. That's a long time ago.
Today we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 5 of Gardens of the Moon, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. This is not a book review, and it's not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Know that we both think that this series is probably the best story that's ever been written. So it's not a critique. It's a fanboy thing.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode will contain descriptions of violence, and it's not recommended for children.
Today we have some additions from one of our listeners. Now, we haven't really mentioned this during the Malazan Brotherhood series, but if anybody has any feedback or thoughts on any of the episodes that we have, you can send us an email at contact@horsefrogproductions.com. We love to hear from the listeners, and potentially you tell us that we got something wrong or a different take on something, or just if we made you think of something and you want to share a story, we'll read it out.
Absolutely.
This set of feedback has come from a listener named Ryan. This is the same Ryan that actually introduced me to the books in the first place.
Now, wait, is Ryan sore about the first sword, or is that somebody else?
No, that was T.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. First point on the Archmage versus Archmage debate. He equates it to the movie Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, where they had McDonald's versus McDowell's. McDonald's has the golden arches, while McDowell's has the golden arcs. So there's no other way for me to interpret this as me saying Archmage is like the bootleg version of Archmage.
I agree. I think you're right. I think it's the bootleg. So Arch, we're going to go for Arch, correct?
You're going to go for Arch. I'm sticking with Archmage.
Oh, you like Archmage? Okay.
Maybe my hamburger's better. You know, you ever think about that?
Well, it's like I think there are archangels in the book, so it's
Yes.
So I'm gonna go. I'll join you, sir.
I mean, you can do whatever you want. I'm going with Archmage. I was about to say Archmage.
Just to keep things interesting, I will vacillate between the two as much as I possibly can.
Okay. Yeah. You start gaslighting the audience a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Ryan also agrees with your sentiment that Gardens of the Moon really starts at the Battle of Pale.
Yeah. Thanks. It really does for me. When I try and tell people about this book, after doing some hardcore looking at some old emails I found between us, I realized that Dead House, I think I feel this way about every book of theirs I read. It's like, of Erikson's I read, it's like, this is my favorite book. While I'm reading it, it's my favorite book. And then I get into it. It's like, because Dead House Gates is fantastic too. When I look back on that stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, because I sent you a bunch of emails about Dead House Gates. It's like, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. There's so much crazy stuff that happens in that one too. But for me, when I try and sell this book to people, it's the Battle of Pale, the introduction of the Bridge Burners, and the Marionette. I mean, that's all you got to say. It's like, and I said, and that's just like that's barely shaving off you're barely even touching the book. And my friend's like, dude, that sounds epic. I'm like, epic doesn't even cut it.
Yeah. If you're not even we can't really talk about it yet, but we'll get into some of the stuff later in this book. There's some other stuff that I would mention in that. I guess it'd be a spoiler. Yeah,
there's some great stuff in this scene that comes to my mind as well as the the later part of this chapter is firmly imprinted in my mind very much because first off, I love Darujistan. We'll talk about that as we get to it. So
Hmm.
it's an introduction of a great city in which who would have thought a city would have played a character in a book? And it's actually it's a very prominent city that we return to and keep coming back to, don't we?
Oh, yeah. It's almost every other book. They kind of alternate back to Darujistan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ryan also said that immediately after the Battle of Pale, when Sari informed Tattersail that Taishran had stopped the attempted rescue for the 1,400 bridge burners trapped in the tunnels, Tattersail had questioned why he would do that. And this caused Sari to get a look of disappointment on her face and walk away from Tattersail. We didn't really understand what was going on with the disappointment. And Ryan thinks this is disappointment with Tattersail's naivete.
Oh.
Which I could see.
I can see that now that you mention it. Thank you, Ron. That's when you think about it like that, that can be a lot. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what we know about Sari and who's driving Sari, it's like I think that there must be some past where this person is like,
Mm-hmm.
I expected better. I think you're right now. Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you, Ron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, this next one's going to blow your mind. How we didn't see this one. When Tattersail was performing the Fatid reading for Taishran, she turned over the Virgin of High House Death. She mentioned that the cloth that covered her eyes was wet, and we could not figure out what was going on here. Ryan interprets this as the cloth is wet with the girl's tears, since she has no agency over her actions and is an unwilling participant in this game.
Dadgum.
So obvious, right?
I told you I was terrible on symbolism in books. I'm dreadful on that stuff. I need it spelled out for me. I'm a dude, Ryan. I'm glad that I know you are, I'm assuming, but thank you for pointing that out because I need something. I miss some obvious things like that. And thank you. Really good catch.
Yeah, I like that interpretation.
Yeah,
I agree.
I do too.
So,
Those are both. Thank you. And you kind of make me look at it a little bit different. I appreciate that a lot.
And again, we look forward to hearing from other people with any thoughts they may have, anything we might have missed or corrections.
Don't forget contact at HorseFrogProductions.com.
All right, Book 2, Darujistan. This is Chapter 5. Still, the year is 1163 Burn Sleep. Now, this is the 907th year in the third millennium. So we're introducing another time scale now. It's during the season of Fanderay in the year of the 5 tusks.
Sorry.
2,000 years since the birth of Darujistan, the city. Now, Fanderay is one of the wolf gods that inhabits the beast throne, and the male god is Tog. And then Year of the 5 Tusks, I'm not sure.
That has something to do with something that's a spoiler if we mention.
Well, I was thinking maybe it might have something to do with Fainer.
Oh, yeah. There
maybe,
you go.
Because maybe. Yeah, but I'm not sure. The chapter begins with a small round man in a dream. He is leaving the city, Darujistan, through 2 Ox Gate. He's heading into the setting sun. He is dressed rather shabbily, and his feet hurt. The tattered tails of his faded red waistcoat flap in his haste. He thinks to himself that in times of conscience, he holds the world's concerns above his. Fortunately, those times were few, and this is not one of those times. His dreams take him through the winding dirt streets of the Gadrobi shantytown. He sees old men wrapped in dingy yellow rags of lepers, squatting around cook fires, and women dunking cats in a muddy well. The symbolism is lost on him.
I'm always reminded of Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail. Women in scenes can be seen dunking cats in various water features, including a well, and there's one by the brook where it looks like she's either whooping him with a stick in the brook. I don't know what it is, but you hear the cat growling every time. But all that dunking, I love it.
We need to add that to the list of Erikson questions, whether that's an inspiration or not.
Yeah, because I'm curious, is that what is this how the peasants are perceived as doing things? Is dunking cats for no reason? Is that an Inquisition joke?
I mean, it seems like you would get all clawed up.
The Inquisition, right?
I don't know.
Or not the Inquisition, but how you know about Black Plague and cats, right? During that Black Plague, cats were burned too because they were seen as witches' familiars, and that's what caused it to spread because it was on rats were spreading it. So the rat population.
Oh, and the cats were killing the rats.
And it's like, whoops.
Yeah, nice. It seems that the round man travels a pretty fair distance, crossing Maitan River Bridge, passing the Gadrobi herder camps, out onto the open road flanked by vineyards. Here he must pause, thinking of the succulent wine the grapes will produce. He knows his mind is in flight, fleeing the doomed city at his back, and the dark brooding smudge above it. that being Moonspawn. Most of all, he is fleeing all he knows and all he is.
Oh, wait a second. Wait. I'm so sorry. Moonspawn hasn't even arrived yet here? Is this a presaging here? Is this all a prescient dream, I guess? Some of it is. I'm sorry. I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah, some of it is.
But I just now thought about that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. He thinks about the fact that he is a natural talent with the power of divination. Some channel their powers through the toss of the knuckle bones, others through the heat fractures in a scapulae, or the deck of dragons. He sees the deck of dragons and any other type of divination as an affectation. He does his divinations in his head, and he can't deny it, no matter how hard he tries. Kruppa tells us his name here. He will often refer to himself in third person. This quote is quite the introduction to him. Quote, "Of course this is a dream, the flight of sleep. Perhaps, thinks Kruppa, he will in truth escape this time. None could call Kruppa a fool after all. Fat with sloth and neglect, yes. Inclined to excesses, indeed. Somewhat clumsy with a bowl of soup, most certainly. But not a fool. Such times are upon us when the wise man must choose. Is it not wisdom to conclude that other lives are of less importance than one's own? Of course. Very wise. Yes, Kruppa is wise." End quote.
Now, I'm going to update this as we go. Kruppa is a personal fave of mine. I don't know if he's one of yours. I don't believe, but for me, I've always liked him. But I don't know if fave is my best description for him. He's my favorite comic relief character. It's kind of a love-hate thing. I love him. I hate him. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's a top, but I don't know how I'd list that. Do you put him in the top 10 or what? I mean,
I wouldn't put him in my top 20, to be honest with you. To be fair, my list is stacked with Marines.
Oh, it's all Marines.
Malazan Marines. Yeah. I mean, it's not even a comparison.
It's everybody in the Malazan. It's basically every sapper, every bridge burner first. I'm with you on that. And then other people's.
Well, okay. Karsa is in top 3, if not number 1.
What about Tool? Sorry, we're jumping the gun. I can't. But
Tool. Yeah, we need to take it easy. I mean, I already said Karsa. Said Karsa.
That's okay.
I mean,
Tool will be introduced in the book, so
yeah,
that's not. We're not jumping too hard with that. But Karsa, Karsa's like number 1, isn't he? I don't know. He's number 1. I think
it's pretty high. Well, I mean,
Dassam too. I mean, I love Dassam. Okay, let's just shut up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need to stop. I mean, we'll ruin the whole series.
Stop. Okay, I'm stopping. Sorry. I get it so excited.
Yeah, but to answer, so he's not in my top 10, not in my top 20. Okay. He's not really a bad character by any stretch of the imagination, but he just goes on and on and on, and the talking too much really gets to me.
It does, but I think that's why. But his ability to infuriate certain people later is. Those are such memorable scenes. Those are the things I remember the most are these things that make me laugh. A lot of times he irritates me, but then he does something that makes me laugh. So I tend to remember those in the long run.
Right. Now, quick question for you: what does he look like to you in your head?
Oh, I know what you said he looks like, and it's like you've scarred me with that. You scarred me with that.
He looks like Patton Oswalt to me.
a grubbier than normal Patton Oswalt, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got a grubby.
Yeah, Patton Oswalt doesn't really have that greasy sheen to him that I imagine Kruppa has, but the look of him, I think definitely. If his hair was curlier,
I think if we were casting, he would be the guy. We'd just have to keep him moistened and his hair all slick.
Kruppa pauses to catch his breath, noting the hills and sun before him are no closer. He thinks, quote, "Such were dreams like the hastening of youth into adulthood, a precipitous course one could never turn back on. But who mentioned youth, or one youth in particular? Surely not wise Kruppa." His mind wanders. Kruppa excuses the pun magnanimously, racked by the misery of his souls, which are tired, nay, half worn out from this reckless pace. Blisters have already appeared, no doubt. The foot cries out for a warm, soapy balm. Its companion joins in the chorus. Ah, such a litany, such a wail of despair. Cease complaining, dear wings of flight. How far is the sun anyway? Just beyond the hills. Kruppa is certain. No more than that, surely. Yes, as certain as an ever-spinning coin. But who spoke of coins? Kruppe proclaims his innocence. End quote. You can kind of tell he goes on.
Yes.
But in that quote, it did kind of exhibit his personality traits a little bit.
Oh,
He
most
will
surely.
whinge and moan about being sore or tired or, whatever is going on physically.
The crazy thing is it's like, and of course, I don't mean to jump it too either, but we know he does that almost because it's a practice he does, because it's almost like it's how he hypnotizes people.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think his constant droning is how he constantly gets away with everything, because they don't pay attention. You stop paying attention to him and you realize that he's actually, that's what's so funny about him, is he's actually he's not an idiot, but he comes across always as an idiot.
He's confounding him.
Yes.
The people that he's dealing with, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. He's disarming them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but my problem is I don't even want to be in the room with the guy. It's like, if I saw him in the room, I'd be like, turn around like, nope, nope.
Yeah. We'll get a little bit of that. I think it's next chapter.
Yeah.
Maybe. Next couple of chapters. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also a healthy component of food and drink to his character.
Oh, yes. Most assuredly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's always spattered with, I'm assuming he's always
pastry,
with
crumbs, honey cakes,
wine, honey stains, wine stains. He's covered in stains.
Yeah. Kruppe sees his destination, an inn just past a crossroads. There is a tree at the crossroads. There is something long, wrapped in a burlap sack hanging from one of the branches. He spares this object only the briefest of glances. Now, you and I both highlighted this quote independently.
Yes.
Quote, ill judgment, pronounces Kruppe. Inns for the dusty journeyman should not sit atop hills. The curse of climbing is discovering how great the distance yet to climb. A word to the proprietor shall be necessary. Once sweet ale has soothed the throat, slabs of juicy red meat and broiled yams eased the gullet, and clean, anointed bandages clothed the feet. Such repairs must take precedence over flaws in planning, such as Kruppe sees here. End quote.
Yeah, he carries on.
Yeah. He enters the inn and is expecting to get something to eat, and finds instead a half-dozen beggars sitting around a thick tallow candle set on the floor. One of the men speaks to Kruppe, saying, "We will grant your audience, hapless one. Be seated and entertain our presence." Kruppe sits and whips out a small rye loaf of bread from one sleeve and cheese from another. Yeah, just out of his sleeves, randomly food appears.
Right.
It's great. He introduces himself and says he is an inhabitant of yon glittering Darujistan, the mystic jewel of Genebakis, the juicy grape ripe for picking. He also says this is his dream. The beggar says, so it is. Kruppe tells them he has always considered them mere aspects of himself, a half-dozen hungers among many.
I always like this quote right there. Do you have that one? All deceit is born of the mind, and there it is nurtured while virtues starve.
Yeah, I like that one too.
I like that quote.
Mm-hmm. The spokesman of the beggars says, perhaps we are your virtues then. Kruppe is rambling on about beggars can't be choosers, especially when it comes to moldy cheese, and states the beggars have once again returned to him in his dreams. The beggar spokesman says, the coin still spins, Kruppe, still spins. There is no humor in his voice. Kruppe sighs and says he hears it, and can't help but hear it. He says he is a man who would challenge the gods in their own game. The spokesman says, perhaps we are your doubts, which you have never been afraid to face before. Yet even we seek to turn you back. Even we demand that you strive for the life of Darujistan, for the life of your many friends, and for the life of the youth at whose feet the coin shall fall. Kruppe notes the coin shall fall this very night. He says, shall Kruppe accept this challenge then? What are gods, after all, if not the perfect victims? For Kruppe, whose sleight of hand is matched only by his sleight of mind. Perfect victims of confidence, claims Kruppe, ever blinded by arrogance, ever convinced of infallibility. Is it not a wonder that they have survived for this long? I love his description of the gods, speaking of their arrogance and their feelings of infallibility.
Yeah, me too. Because these gods are very similar in ways that I'm reminded of some of the, like the Greek mythology stuff, all that petty bickering.
Mhm.
And it's like, ugh, and people pay when they bicker, by the
Yes.
thousands, I'm assuming.
Mhm. Yeah, especially if the conflict leads to some confrontation in our realm or
Right.
the realm of humans, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. The spokesman says, "Perhaps we are your gifts, then, wasting away, as it were." Kruppa thinks it's possible and points out only one of the beggars is speaking. The beggar tells him that the others may not have yet found their voice. They are awaiting the command of their master. Kruppa agrees and thinks he is full of surprises. The spokesman asks if Kruppa returns to Darujistan. Kruppa confirms and stands up with a groan. He says he merely stepped out of the city for a breath of fresh air. The coin falls and he needs to take his place at the center of things. He will return to bed this night. Surveying the beggars, he notes that they all gained weight and nods in satisfaction. As he begins to leave, Kruppa says, "It has," pronounces Kruppa, "been a pleasure, gentlemen. Next time, however, let us settle on an inn that is not on a hilltop. Agreed?" The spokesman says, "Ah, but, Kruppa, gifts are not easily attained, nor are virtues, nor are doubts easily overcome, and hungers are ever the impetus to climbing."
Nice.
Kruppa's eyes narrow on the spokesman, and he mutters, "Kruppa is too clever by far." He's
Yeah, he
like
is.
dueling with himself
Yeah,
verbally. It's like his subconscious.
exactly what it is. Oh.
Kruppa takes his leave and heads down to the crossroads and stands in front of the burlap-wrapped figure hanging from the tree. He plants his hands on his hips and says, "I know who you are." The final aspect of Kruppa to complete this dream's array of those faces facing him, which are Kruppa's own. Or so you would proclaim. You are humility, but, as everyone knows, humility has no place in Kruppa's life. Remember that. So here you will stay. He looks to the city lighting the eastern sky blue and green. He says, "Ah, this wondrous fiery gem that is Darujistan is home to Kruppa, and that is as it should be." He begins walking home. And I never somehow picked up on this before, but I love how he has this humility tied up and hanging in a burlap sack.
Yeah.
It's a great way to set up your internal dialogue. If your goal is to kind of do something that's really difficult to achieve, right? You got
Yeah.
to kind of put the humility aside. But I
Yes.
like the symbolism of that.
Yeah. And what this also reminds me of, in a strange way, it's not going to be something you're probably familiar with because I don't think you've read much Constantine, the Hellblazer comics. That takes place in DC Universe, but he's one of these guys. He's like the prime magician. He's not like Doctor Strange. He's more of a guy that rides the waves of synchronicity and finds bad things happening. He's kind of like an exorcist con man kind of deal. He does a little bit of all this stuff, but part of his training and one of earlier was to try and get rid of self in certain ways. It helps magicians. It helps people who focus on, especially a guy like Kruppa, who's really smart, even though it comes across as kind of foolish. But a guy who's an adept at reading the fatigue, if he actually used it, or the deck of dragons, he just seems to do it in his mind. And I think
Mhm.
that's part of the reason I like him, because of the fact he's very enigmatic, but he's obviously very, very, very smart, and he comes across as a fool, even though we know he's not a fool.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah, we'll find that
yeah,
out for
and
sure.
we definitely do. He's foolish.
Yeah.
He's foolish, but not the fool. I guess is the weird.
Mhm.
I guess is the way I put that. Maybe I don't know.
We'll have to come back to some of his
Yeah,
actions later and
yeah,
see about that.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm having trouble picturing how he's foolish, but he's definitely intelligent
Yes,
and he puts on a good show for people.
yes,
Yeah.
he does.
Now, okay, quick tangent. Did you see that Keanu Reeves is going to be in Constantine 2?
What? There's going to be a Constantine too?
Yeah, I just saw it
Oh
the other
my
day.
goodness. Well,
Isn't that awesome?
I hated that. Hated
You
that
didn't like that movie?
Constantine.
I love that
No,
movie. Well,
it's
you're a
so
comic. Okay, so again, so this is
it's
one of those
disrespectful.
scenarios.
Yes, it's disrespectful to John Constantine. You have to watch. You have to watch the John Constantine show that was done by the people that did Hannibal.
Okay.
And because that's along the lines of what Constantine should be. And he's a limey. And I'm sorry, Chaz is not Shia LaBeouf. Chaz is a big burly dude that has beat Constantine up multiple times, because Constantine gets too full of himself and uses his friends. So a couple times
Mm.
Chaz has tuned him up, and Shia LaBeouf didn't look like he was strong enough to floss his own teeth in that movie. He was still had that fresh from that Disney look, didn't he?
Well, he was young. I don't want to say he was a
But
teenager in
a
that.
lot of people really enjoy that, and if it brings people into the Constantine world, I'm not going to fuss. Especially, have you heard about the James Gunn thing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that
Mhm.
makes, then knowing that, I may like it
Well,
better.
okay, let's
Sorry.
say for people that aren't following
Yes.
what happened with that. So, you go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure exactly. Is he the head of DC?
So him and there's somebody else have been put in charge of the extended universe of the DC cinematic show stuff, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
think Kevin Feige from Marvel,
Yes.
but for DC,
Yes.
which I liked the James Gunn Suicide
Oh
Squad
my!
movie. I thought it was pretty
Did you
good.
watch Peacemaker yet?
Not yet, no.
Oh my word! Yeah, don't no kids in the room, please. But man, but Peacemaker is ridiculous. It's as ridiculous. It's the spinoff of Suicide Squad, and James Gunn wrote every episode and directed half the
Okay.
episodes. So it's worth
Okay.
watching. It's fun. It's hilarious and uncomfortable.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm kind of so I may be more excited with Constantine being under Gunn's control.
Okay.
Because I really like what he does with comic book movies. I love what that dude does. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy, please.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a fantastic series. And his Suicide Squad. Of course, he did Slither. And have you seen Super?
No.
Oh my word! It's Rainn Wilson. Rainn Wilson decides to put on a costume and fight crime, but he walks around hitting people with a pipe wrench.
Oh, geez.
And it's real funny because he's standing in line and this guy cuts in front of him, and he says. And he goes and gets in his car, and you see his butt pressed up against the glass as he's changing into this outfit in the car in front of everybody. And he comes out and smacks this guy in the face with a pipe wrench for cutting in line.
That sounds a little extreme.
It is. It's great. Did I say Slither? He directed Slither. So he does, Gunn does magnificent film.
Okay.
And I expect him to be weird. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's a weird guy. He's
a film director. All film directors are weird.
We are taken to Darujistan, and we'll need to spend some time describing the city since it is so important to the overall story.
Yeah.
Darujistan is located centrally on Genabakis, south of Lake Azure and north of the Gadrobi foothills. The city is described thusly. The rooftops of Darujistan presented flat tops, arched gables, cone towers, belfries, and platforms crowded in such chaotic profusion as to leave all but the major streets forever hidden from the sun. The dark streets and alleyways are lit by iron torches fed by copper pipes. These pipes are fed gas from the great caverns beneath the city. When burned, the gas casts a blue and green light. The gas is channeled through massive valves beneath the city, and this network is maintained by an order referred to as the Gray Faces. They are described as silent men and women who moved like specters beneath the city's cobbled streets. For 900 years, the gas has fed at least one of the city's districts. During that time, pipes had been sundered by raging tenement fires, and gouts of flame reached hundreds of feet into the sky. Throughout this, the Gray Faces had held on, twisting the shackles and driving their invisible dragon to its knees.
Something about this place is very alluring to me, and I just love the location. But what are your feelings about it? Is it a desert-type town, even though we're on a lake?
I get a very Arabian Nights vibe to the city, and I think of the golden age of Arab science, kind of circa 750, 1258.
Absolutely, dude. Thank you. That's exactly what I kind of feel like, too. Prince of Persia, Arabian Nights. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that's exactly how. I think that's why I like it so much, because we get some of that action in this episode. This episode tonight, we'll get that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So we'll get some of that vibe here.
Yep. Quote: beneath the rooftops was an underworld forever bathed in a blue glow. Such light marked the major avenues and the oft-frequented narrow and crooked thoroughways of the markets. In the city, however, over 20,000 alleys, barely wide enough for a two-wheeled cart, remained in shadow, broken only by the occasional torch-bearing citizen or the globed lanterns of the city watch, end quote. And I think it's interesting how even during the day, the alleyways are so dark due to all the buildings blocking out the sun.
I do too. And what's funny, I think I appreciate you pointing that out, because what I did yesterday before, I like to do this today before we do an episode. I'll listen to the chapter. I was listening to it at work, and so I zoned out a little bit during some of it, but that one something about when he said that, I was like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that being dark in the sunlight. So
yeah, generally speaking, I always picture the city as the streets
bright.
In sun. Yeah.
It's just bright sunlit streets, man, like just ancient Egypt right out there.
Exactly. Yeah, like a Cairo kind of.
Yes. I'm fascinated by that time period. I think that's why I like the city so much.
The rooftops are further described in this quote. By day, the rooftops were bright and hot beneath the sun, crowded with the fluttering flags of domestic life drying in the lake wind. By night, the stars and moon illuminated a world webbed with empty clotheslines and the chaotic shadows they cast. The book shifts to describe a shadowy figure making its way over the rooftops on this night. He is a thief and he is ready to go about his trade. It lists all the cool and expensive gear this man has. Yeah. The loadout is that of a thief. The tips of his moccasins are soaked in pitch to aid in scaling walls. As he walks on the rooftops, he's careful not to let his toes come fully in contact with the ground so that the pitch maintains its efficacy. It sounds difficult to walk that way and be quiet about it, or with any speed.
I thought that you would wait till you get close to the place to put the pitch on your moccasins there.
Yeah, instead he can duck walk the whole way there.
Right. You know, it's like, please, come on. A little disappointed there.
Yeah. He is in a very expensive neighborhood checking out the Darl estate. Our thief's name is Crocus Younghand.
Crocus.
It is mentioned that the Darl estate is a popular topic among the higher circles of Darujistan's nobility, specifically for the eligibility of the family's youngest daughter. Many had been the suitors, many the gifts of gems and baubles that now resided in the young maiden's bedroom. It is further added that while such stories were passed like the sweetest bread in the upper circles, few of the commonry paid attention when the tales trickled down into their company. But there were those who listened carefully indeed, possessive and mute with their thoughts, yet oddly eager for details. Crocus is surveying the Darl estate from a nearby rooftop. He notes there is a slumbering guard sitting on a bench in the family garden with his spear across his knees. Crocus uses his power of deduction to determine the girl's bedroom would be on the highest floor with a balcony overlooking the garden. He finds a suitable candidate for her balcony and moves until he is directly above it. It is a 10-foot climb from the rooftop to the balcony. He successfully climbs down without alerting anyone. It takes him a while to breach the sliding door leading into the room due to his attempts at remaining undetected. He uses an expensive hardened micro saw to cut through the latch securing the door. It's said to be as quiet as the shivering of a locust's leg.
Wow.
And that's impressive skill, keeping that noise to a minimum.
Yes, it is. That's real impressive.
Crocus's uncle is apparently wealthy and absent-minded, and also in the habit of leaving expensive tools like the saw laying around. Crocus liberates these for his own use.
Yes.
Crocus finally enters the room, surveying the contents. He slowly makes his way to the makeup stand. We are taken to a building near Kroll'S Temple. Kroll'S Temple is located 3 plots from the Darl estate on the summit of the hill. It is mentioned that the last monk of the elder god Kroll had died many generations past. A figure lies hidden on the roof of the building several streets away from Kroll'S Temple. We are introduced to Tallow Crafar, who is described as sweaty, wide-eyed, and having blood-stained hands. The blood is his own. His mission this night is as a roamer on a night patrol of the city's rooftops. He thinks that except for the occasional thief, the rooftops belong to the assassins at night. The rooftops are the route on the missions of unsanctioned political activities, or the continuation of a feud between 2 houses, or the punishment for betrayal. The council ruled by day under public scrutiny, and the guild ruled by night, unseen, leaving no witnesses. That's the Assassin's Guild.
Yes.
It has always been this way since Darujistan first rose on the shores of Lake Azure. Tallow had been crossing a roof when he had been shot in the back, the quarrel hitting his left shoulder. The crossbow bolt passed through him. He finds the bolt and notices it is heavier than a thief's crossbow bolt, likely an assassin's bolt. Tallow realizes that perhaps an assassin's war has started, but can't imagine who would challenge Vorkin's mastery of the guild. And that's another amazing name. And I love that character too,
I do too.
Vorkin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really cool person.
Tallow makes his way from the rooftop down into an alley and feels like he is being watched. He is losing a lot of blood and becomes lightheaded from the effort. He realizes he may be trapped and will have to turn this around, or he is a dead man. He decides to go to Kroll'S Temple and to make his way to the belfry to set a trap and turn the tables on his pursuer. He is able to successfully make his way to the belfry. Cut back to the Darl estate and Crocus. Crocus has successfully picked the lock on the jewelry case and cleaned the box out. He had a small fortune of gold, gem, and pearl-studded jewelry. All of this is in his small leather bag tied to his belt. As he is stealing, he finds something of a memento for himself from her items, a nice scarf. He approaches the bed and finally sees the girl. A flush fills his cheeks as he sees that she is sleeping topless. Crocus is stricken by her beauty. He has seen naked women before, but still her beauty leaves an impression on him. And of course it has. This 17-year-old lad has no chance.
Nope.
Here.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mentioned something here, the fact that, I mentioned the topless scene, not to the fact that that's one of the things I like about this book. It's not dirty. It's just, it's a hot town. She's sleeping, to be cool, I'm assuming. But it's not dwelt on. And I've always been blown away by how, for the most part, these books are pretty clean. Probably the most violent things I've ever read, but they are clean. Other than the more graphic violence that occurs pretty regularly.
Yeah, there's really not a lot of that type of content.
No,
The
it's really not.
sexual stuff. Yeah.
And I'm really happy about that. It's no like South Park talks about, no floppy wieners.
Crocus grimaces and makes his way out of the room onto the balcony. He makes his way to the roof and notes the stars overhead are still able to penetrate the smoke filling the sky. The smoke is from Pale in the north. That's pretty impressive, given that's like 1,000 leagues away.
Yeah.
The smoke made it this far. When you think, how wide is the United States?
Well,
it's like 3,000 miles roughly, right?
Yeah.
Something like that? Okay. There was mention that those wildfires they had in California last year, the year before, the smoke made its way to New York. That's the kind of scale we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think the destruction in Pale compared to wildfires that ravaged half the state of California. If the smoke is truly making it this far south, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, I think about the fact that they were, dropping chunks of flaming magma, basically. If that stuff is still on fire, I'm assuming it just wiped out a huge chunk of the city, I would assume.
Yeah, but I think when you have that much smoke coming from a place that far away, like you'd have to evacuate the whole thing. They didn't really evacuate the city.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe either way, the smoke's here. He's thinking about it.
Yeah.
He thinks to himself, and we're next.
Yeah.
News of Pale's fall had reached Darujhistan 2 days ago. His uncle has told him the council in Darujhistan is frantically proclaiming neutrality, desperate in their attempts to distance themselves from the now defunct Free Cities Alliance. Yeah, that's a bunch of free cities on Genebakis that banded together to try to fend off the Malazan Empire.
Yep.
He thinks to himself, but the Malazans aren't listening. And why should they? The army of Darujhistan is made of a contemptible handful of noble sons who do nothing but strut back and forth on Whore Street, gripping their jeweled swords. On the roof, Crocus sees Kroll'S belfry rising to his left. He checks his gear for the journey across the rooftops and, once satisfied, thinks it has been a fine night indeed. He smiles to himself. Back to Tallow, who wakes up after having blacked out from the blood loss. He sees movement on the rooftops and prepares to fire. Crocus is about halfway across the roof when a coin clatters loudly at his feet. Reflexively, he bends down and reaches for it. He hears something overhead and it hits a roof tile about 20 feet away. He realizes someone just shot a quarrel at him. Tallow curses because he can't believe he has missed. He senses something and a tall figure is standing over him. Tallow is killed by an unknown assailant with 2 long, grooved daggers. Crocus hears something and sees something fall. This is Tallow's body. It falls about 15 feet from his current location. Crocus looks up in the tower and sees a tall figure studying him. 2 glittering long-bladed knives are held in its hands. In the belfry, the killer's oddly shaped eyes watch Crocus as he runs. Crocus makes it to the edge of the roof and disappears over it. The killer notes that a burst of power had just frayed the night, and that's when the coin dropped. The killer hisses a spell in an ancient language older than the belfry and the temple, a language not heard in this land for millennia. The figure leaps from the tower and slowly descends to the rooftop below. Any D&D player would know this as Featherfall.
Now, I did not. Has that been around forever? I don't recall.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't recall ever using Featherfall, but we were brute force. It's magic missiles and
Depends
fireballs.
on your class, right?
Right.
In World of Warcraft, there was also similar spells.
That's cool, dude. I love that imagery of them jumping off and just kind of floating down. It's very unsettling to me for some reason. I don't know why, but I love it.
Especially when you have this dark cloaked assassin, their cloak flapping behind them, and they're just kind of winged it's almost like a Dracula-esque.
Yeah.
Or you know what? It's Batman-esque.
It is Batman-esque. I would dare say that it is Batman-esque.
2 more shadowy figures join the first on the rooftop. The last to arrive issues a command and moves off. The other 2 exchange a few words, then follow Crocus.
The first time I read this, I was really blown away how Erikson switches from one viewpoint to another. And it happens so smoothly. It feels like a movie in my head. And as you and I both know, a good author does this well, but Erikson tends to exceed this on a visual level for me in almost everything he does.
Agreed. This scene in particular, it's very action-packed, and it is almost like you're seeing scenes play out as you would in a movie. And again, this originated as a screenplay.
Yeah, that's right.
Before it was a book, he was trying to sell it as a movie idea.
Wow.
Right?
I'm so glad it made a book instead.
Yeah.
Now we can make a terrible feature film about it.
No.
We'll turn everyone off on it. I'm sorry.
No.
I hope not.
No.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah. The only person I would trust to do this right is me. When I have $1 billion, I'll do it.
Right. There we go.
I'll do it right. I got the cast planned out and everything. I just gotta get the money. I would be part of the hashtag no changes crowd too. Trust me.
Oh.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I generally fall in the camp of I don't want any changes for the movie of the books, and I get real salty whenever they change something up. Though I will say the decisions that they made when making the Dune movie this time, I actually liked them.
You were scared.
Liette Kynes in particular.
You were more nervous.
The gender swap on that one made me nervous, but I really actually liked that actress in that role. I thought she did a good job. Yeah. Back on track here. Stay on target. 10 minutes later, Crocus is leaned against a sloped roof trying to get his breath. He hasn't been able to detect his pursuers. He is reflecting on the fact an assassin had almost killed him, and then the assassin had been killed himself. What had he stumbled upon? The rooftops were a risky place to be if there was a guild war. Crocus hears and sees one of the killers charging towards him with 2 daggers flashing in the air. Seeing this, Crocus darts to the roof's edge and leaps into the darkness. Fortunately, Crocus has picked this area to rest because he is familiar with it. As he falls, he reaches out grasping hands. He catches a guide wire near the elbows and scrambles frantically for a secure grip. That would hurt so bad.
Word. It would just about rip your arm out of socket.
I imagine. Yeah, you dislocate your shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. While most of the clotheslines in the city's streets were just thin, unreliable hemp, among them were wrapped wires placed by thieves generations past. It is called the Monkey Road. By day, it looks no different than any other clothesline. Its true purpose came with the setting sun. Crocus's hands are burned raw from this little maneuver.
I bet.
He chances a look up and sees another assailant standing on the edge of a rooftop aiming a crossbow at him. He lets go of the wire just in time. The quarrel flies over his head as he falls. Crocus is assaulted with clotheslines all the way down to the alley below. His head hits a wall as he lands, dazing him. Crocus looks up to see one of the killers slowly floating to the ground. He recognizes the sorcery and runs. As he is about to exit cover, he checks around the corner and a crossbow quarrel almost hits him in the face. He spins and runs. He hears the flapping of a cloak above him. A burning spasm in his left hip makes him stumble. Another quarrel misses him. The spasm passes and he stumbles on. Crocus runs into a building. As Crocus runs into the building, a woman is sitting on the steps of the building he just entered. Her eyes glitter when she sees him, and she rapped the pipe against the sole of her shoe as he entered.
Do you think that's a signal for something? I'm assuming they were so deliberate in showing it.
Yeah, the glittering in her eyes, it kind of makes me think that this is some type of Thieves Guild stuff.
Yeah.
Like a coded system they have set up.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because I didn't want to say when I jumped the gun, but the ruckus that we're about to hear, as I was curious if it was triggered by this.
Okay, so Crocus enters the building. He is assaulted with a cacophony of noise, voices raised in an argument, wailing babies, the clatter of cookware. He exclaims, "Don't you people ever sleep?" This right here leads me to believe that wasn't necessarily planned out for his benefit.
Right.
He's just complaining because they're just making so much noise in the middle of the night. Kids crying, people.
Unless this is all part of the plan.
Oh,
I'm
maybe.
sorry.
Could
I
be.
don't think it is, but I was just being sarcastic.
It could be.
It could be.
It's possible. Yeah. I mean, everything else is going his way.
Right.
Right. On the top floor, Crocus enters an apartment. It is his uncle Mammoth's house. Crocus's uncle greets him as he enters, then goes back to frantically scrawling on a piece of parchment. Mammoth has a small winged monkey on his shoulder. Its half-mad gaze follows Crocus as he makes his way through the apartment. That thing.
Yeah. It's Moby, right?
Yeah. Crocus greets his uncle as he runs to a window and jumps out to a tree in the courtyard. As he jumps out the window, he hears someone above him being startled and falling into the courtyard into a group of cats. A voice groans out a single-paned curse. That's the second mention of cats we've had so far tonight.
Yeah, I love it.
Crocus is quite the acrobat. He uses the tree to get to another building, and he keeps on running through this one. As he enters this building, he hears movement in another room. He runs to a ladder at the end of the hallway and climbs to the roof. On the roof, he crouches in darkness to catch his breath. Thinking that he injured something in this pursuit, he feels a burning sensation close to his hip. Bending and reaching to massage it, he notices it is very hot and realizes it's the coin he picked up.
Nice. A little divine intervention.
Yeah, the spasm in his hip again was divine intervention as well, right? Because the quarrel missed him.
I didn't know if it was it an actually spasm, or was he feeling this burn? He thought it was a spasm, like cold.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. As he bends, he hears a sudden whistling sound and chips of stone spattered around him. Without pause, Crocus jumps to an awning about 10 feet beneath him. As Crocus lands on the street, he is near an inn he frequents. The sign for the establishment has the faded image of a bird dead on its back, feet jutting upward.
I love this place. One of my favorites.
Mm-hmm. Crocus quickly ducks inside. A mug is pushed into his hand. Crocus opens his eyes to see Salty, a tavern wench, hurry by with a tray loaded with pewter tankards. She glances over her shoulder and asks, "Rough night, Crocus?" Crocus responds, "No, nothing special," and drinks deep from the mug.
Now, just a quick note here for people. We've mentioned the fact that sometimes people get turned off, but there's a huge list of characters. Some of the characters that are mentioned have like a line. I don't know why all these people are listed so early sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they do become more important as the story goes. But you should never be intimidated by this, people. I mean, there is so much great stuff goes on in this book. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, I can't say it big out loud because there's so many great other visual images I have from this book, that we haven't even mentioned yet because it's toward the end.
Yeah, the Phoenix Inn crowd, they're gonna be throughout the books.
Yes,
the mention of Salty, she's in a lot of the books.
The Phoenix Inn regulars are prominent players overall, but they introduce them kind of like, some of them are introduced almost like Tavora. Like, we're introduced to Tavora because we know we're going to see
way in advance of actually seeing her.
Yes, but 2 or 3 books ahead.
Yeah.
So yes, it's kind of wild. So they do this. He does this a lot, but don't be intimidated. It's fantastic. I mean, again, as we ran through this stuff right here, my heart gets to racing when I think about this in my brain. It's such an exciting scene, man. I love it.
Yeah, it's really good. And to the point about those characters showing up well in advance, this is what makes rereading the book so interesting, is because when you're going back through, you would not believe all the little Easter eggs that he's thrown in in advance. Like, we can't even go into some of this stuff.
No.
We may be hearing us saying, "Oh, we can't talk about it," but those are all Easter eggs of stuff that's coming down the road.
Yeah.
It's incredible how far in advance some of this stuff is planned.
As an example, one of my favorite things that was pointed out to us, isn't it book 2 that we find the body that leads to book 5?
Book 3, I think.
Book 3, okay.
Because that's in the Panion Damen, and that was over by Coral, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah.
You're right. But that kind of helps tie timelines together.
It does.
That's going to have to be critical for us.
Yeah, we got to really drill down on that when we get to that.
Outside the inn, 2 of the hunters meet up. One is holding a crossbowed. Type this nonsense. One is holding a crossbow and is studying the door Crocus had entered. The second hunter walks up and the first asks, "What happened to you?" The second hunter says, "Had an argument with a cat."
Sounds like several cats, I think.
Yeah.
He was the guy that fell in amongst those cats, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm. The first hunter points out that all the events helping Crocus evade being killed were too awry to be natural. The other agrees, saying, "You felt the parting too, then." And this is referring to the dropping of the coin. Reality was parted at that moment.
Yeah.
The first hunter says, "An ascendant meddled, too cautious to show itself fully, however." The other remarks that this is unfortunate. It's been years since I last killed an ascendant.
Wow. These are some pretty bad dudes.
Yeah. They had to have been pretty powerful to take down an ascendant.
Right.
And remember, they were speaking in a language older than Darujistan,
right?
older
Yeah.
than the temple, some millennia old.
Yeah.
They've been around a while.
Yeah.
The third killer approaches the first two. It's their commander. The second hunter tells the commander Crocus is in the inn. The first hunter says, "We'll leave no witnesses to this secret war with the guild." Assassin war confirmed.
Yep. You heard it first.
The commander tells the other two, "No. The wagging tongue of a witness might be useful to our efforts."
Absolutely.
The first hunter remarks, "The runt had help." The commander shakes her head and says, "We return to the fold." Two hunters put their weapons away. The first asks, "Who protected him, do you think?" The second hunter responds, "Someone with a sense of humor." And thus, chapter 5 of book 2 ends.
Nice. Good episode. Good, great chapter. I love all that stuff with the on the rooftops. It's some of my personal, it's some of the stuff that my brain goes to immediately when we start going that way. I'm like, yes, we're going to be this. I like this stuff.
Everything about the assassins in these books, whether it's the Claw, the guilds, any other faction, the assassins are some of the coolest groups of characters in the series.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I think I'd rather hang with the Marines than the assassins, but the assassins are cool, and so are the Marines. The Marines are kind of on the side of they're humans, so they're on our side. I'll look at it.
The humor comes from the Marines mostly, the shenanigans that they get up to. The assassins are just some of the stuff they pull off, man. It's crazy. Yeah. They're hard, right?
They're hardcore.
Yeah.
Real hardcore.
So for standout moments, Crupes wrapped in hanging humility. I love that. It says a lot about him, but I really like that symbolism.
I do too. I really enjoyed that very much. And I think you're right. It does say an awful lot about him. That, of course, we already know all about him, but I like when you see these, like you see on the rereads, you see things like that you pick up a little bit more this time. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I think I was resistant to reading into him too much, but I was like, we got to do it justice, So I'm just like, let me get back to the Marines. Let me get back to the Marines.
I know it. I want to get back to the Phoenix Inn regulars and the Marines because they're kind of almost hand in hand for me. Both of them are very great companies of people. They're both very interesting groups of folks. Because think about, we've got some of our favorites on this that we will be introduced to. We love Rallick Nom.
Yeah, Rallick Nom. Yeah, and I do like Murillo too.
Yeah.
Call.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of great Phoenix Inn regulars here too.
Yeah. The history of Darujistan is neat, and it'll be further fleshed out down the line.
Yes.
Again, some really cool stuff happens here.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
And then the cats, you and I are cat people. So the dunking of the cats, I'm not for dunking cats, but it is funny in this context. And then the assassin falling into the cats and getting hurt by them when it's like a millennia old assassin that's killed gods gets messed up by cats.
I love it. Only cats can take them by surprise.
Yes.
I love it. We were right to own cats. We know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have any other standout moments?
No, I think that with you, I'm just going to, for me, because this is, it all is about the rooftop for me. And this whole chapter is about the rooftop. That last bit is, all strictly with Crocus starting with him going in the thieving and then the assassin stuff happening over here. And then the meeting of the two. So fantastic. I mean, like I said, this is some of the stuff that always stands out. And I forget, I think we've mentioned this multiple times, and we'll continue to mention this multiple times. I forget so much, but there are certain things that never leave my imagination in these books. Like I said, Battle of Pale never leaves my imagination. The rooftops and Kroll's Tower, all that stuff never leaves my brain because it's very, very epic stuff. It becomes the epicenter actually. So it's understandable why we feel this way about the rooftops. I think.
Yeah.
Or why I feel that way.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, just a great episode. And I just want to tell everyone
thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, I can't wait for next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we'd really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link.
Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.